Hello and welcome back to KNF Design. If you're new, my name is Katie. Don't forget to give me that like and hit that subscribe button down below so we can keep crafting together. Today I'm going to be showing you some tips and tricks to code making. I had a bunch of birthdays, so I needed a bunch of codes to make for this month and the next month. So I figured I'd bring you along and show off some of my tips and tricks and suggestions when making codes. All of these designs are from Creative Fabrica, so some of them might look just a little different because I added a little bit of my own twist to some of them since they're just going out to friends and family. If you are trying to find those, they might look a little different. But with that, let's get right into those tips and tricks. So the first trick I want to show you is if you're making a bunch of codes, it's kind of easier if you put them all together like this. This is more advanced if you're not used to making codes, then just do the one code, print it, and then do your next code. But if you're a little bit more advanced and think you can handle it, you can put multiple different designs and codes on one canvas here. And then I like to go over here to Color Sync and look at my colors. So this green here looks similar to this green here, and I'm okay with them being the same color green. So right now they would all be on different mats, and that makes for a bunch of different mats. But I'm going to, again under Color Sync, take that color and I'm just holding it down as I'm bringing it up to this green that's very similar. And so now it changed it to that same green, which means they'll all be cut on the same mat. So I like to just go through, well, these two blues are very similar. It's actually the blue for this and on the candle, and that's okay that they're the same blue. So we'll put them together. So I like to just go through and look at things like that and move similar colors with each other, just to save some mats, and it also saves some code stock. Back in the layers panel, I'm going to just get rid of some of this extra stuff so it's not as confusing for you. Alright, so let's just look at these here. We'll look at, so for my happy birthday, I did some score lines on where my letters are supposed to go. That just helped with the spacing of them and keeping them straight. And the way I do that is, actually I'll start, so I'll even show you how I did my offset. So let's duplicate my happy birthday, and then I go over to offset. It is up here in the middle. You can type in a number that you want, or you can kind of see the blue lines as they're going. I think that looks pretty good, and we'll hit apply. Now there's a few gaps here. I'll get rid of those with contour and just click on those little spots and then hit the X, and you can see that they've all gone away. We'll just make it yellow so it's similar to our other one here. Now typically you'd be done and you could do that, but I want to actually make this happy a score line. So I'm actually going to duplicate it so I still have, duplicate the letters. You can also go over here to the side panel and select it that way as well. And then I'm going to select just the letters. And up here in operations from basic cut, I'm going to go down to score. And you can see that they've now turned into score lines, but I still have my letters that will individually be cut, and then I'll glue those on. another technique, if those score lines were still a little too hard for you to see, you could score it twice. And to do that, you go over to your score and you hit duplicate. And so now you have 2 of them. But we want to make sure they're lined up exactly. So we'll just select everything, arrange, align, and center. So everything's nice, centered, and we just want to make sure it's all attached. So that way the score isn't on a separate map by itself. Another way you can tell is it says multiple here with a line through it. That just means you have multiple things going on in this one design. And if you go over here to the panel, layers panel, you click on like the happy, it'll say it's scored. The offset, it's a cut. And so that's how I did those. And again, you can kind of tell the double lines are thicker than just the single lines here. And that'll be easier to read if the single layer of scoreline is too hard to see. And the other thing I want to show you is how to create the code itself. So we have a little dog here. I'll just pull it down here. And we have a dog shape. So how on earth did we get the dog shape into a code? So first we need to get a shape. We have a shape here. My code's about 10 by 7, so let's just make this one. I'll probably end up changing that later. I also need to select the lock button because we want it not to be a square but a rectangle. So it's a 10 by 7. So here's our code. I will change it to, let's do a light blue so it's easy to see. A dog kind of gets hidden when it's behind it, so just so you can see things better, I'm going to go to arrange and send that to the back. And so now you can see the dog goes in front of it. To line up the pieces, I select both the dog and the rectangle. Again, you can select them here or just by clicking and holding the shift button. And then in the line panel, you can arrange it how you want. I want the dog's paws to be at the bottom, so I just clicked align bottom. Now, to get the cutout, we need the dog to be sticking out a little bit. So I'm just going to move my dog over with my arrow keys, and this is going to create a shape. Let's keep his paw in. Let's just do that much. You could then align at bottom from here as well. So then select both your dog and your code, and we'll go over to the combine and then weld. And so now you have the cutout of the dog. So now it ends up being about 11, so I'm going to actually just change that back to a 10 so it's not too big. And then we also need to do a score line, which is this little line here, and like when I hovered over it, it said score. Well, I can't grab it. There we go. So my code is 7 inches high, so we want the score line here to also be 7 inches tall. And then I will select my code and I will center it. And that is, then I will attach both of them. That way the attach stays with my code when I go to make it. That's all there is to it. If you wanted to keep that dog shape, just make sure you duplicated it. And that way, because now I've lost the dog. If you forgot to do it, you can either hit the undo button a few times. And there's our dog back, so you would just go right click, duplicate, or you could hit duplicate there. And then let's line about there, align bottom. And then we would do a weld. and then we have it again, and we still have this one. Oops, whoa. Center front. And he will fit nicely there when you try to put him on your card. I could have also attached his little pony hat here if I wanted to. And in order to do that, if I wanted to do that, first I would have duplicated both pieces so I don't lose them. And you can put the little fluffy piece and the hat, select both, weld them together. So now that it's one, and then on my dog shape, I would have also welded him. Let's put the hat right there, looks good. Select the hat and the dog, combine and weld. I'm just going to put him on this side of the code just to show you that it does the same thing. I think I'm actually going to flip him so his hat is inward. There we go. Looks good. So we'll select him in the code, align bottom, and he's already there, and then weld. So then you have his hat still attached, and the dog as well. I don't want you to be intimidated by a pop-up code. It looks like there's a lot going on, but it really is pretty simple when you have the template, and this one even showed you where to place the flowers if you wanted to follow theirs. There's one little butterfly back here that I didn't follow their template exactly, so he's covered up by that flower. To me, there's enough butterflies and other stuff. That's not a big deal, but if you want it to look like theirs, you can. And it does lay flat to go in a code. I didn't make an envelope. I'm just going to hand it like this. I also used the little hood punch outs in the back. It just seemed plain there, something I did. You could even do that same design again, or whatever you want, and there's nothing to the bottom of this. If you do make this one, it has little tabs that you fold and can glue in, and then the tabs for the box. I think that was probably the hardest part, but again, it wasn't too bad, and they did have instructions. They were just photos, so you can do it, and let me know if you tried making some. I might make some pop-ups on my own in the future. One other tip to do is if you are doing writing on your cardstock, this is a very textured piece of cardstock, so my pen didn't write on it very well, so I suggest either doing it the other side or on a smooth piece of cardstock, just so your writing doesn't bleed and it comes out cleaner. Another technique to do is in the fold. So this card here with the cupcake, you can see my white part of my cardstock coming through. That is because if you don't have a either a scoring tool or scoring stylus, you can actually make little dotted cuts, and that will fold your card, and it makes it lay pretty flat. For this one, I used a scoring stylus, and then I just bent where that indentation was, and you can see it doesn't close quite as much, but I like this better just because it just seems more sturdy. This one I'm almost a little afraid with too much opening and closing it's going to start ripping, or if you did a little tearing here it would just tear easily. And also I would recommend doing cardstock that is a solid core versus this white core so you don't see that line. I also, when doing cards that have these cutouts, just make sure that you watch where you put your happy birthday or when you write on the card, because you don't want it showing through to the other side. To make this pop out, I just have some foam tape, and I actually did 2 layers of it in various sections to make it pop. And then I did a similar one on that one. I might do a light pencil tracing just around the outside so I know where to keep my writing in, and then just erase it when I'm done. Then for this card, I have, I did the permanent vinyl as this black piece and set it on my cardstock. It doesn't stick the best, but once you finally get it on there, it's sticking pretty well. So that might just give a little bit of issues to you. I actually recommend doing heat transfer vinyl instead of permanent vinyl for this. I just liked that shiny look, whereas heat transfer iron-on vinyl is more of a matte look typically. It'll be easier to iron it on. When you iron it on, you want to first put either a towel or a mat underneath your card, and then the heat transfer vinyl will have a carrier sheet on it. But if that carrier sheet, like for this one, it should cover the whole card. But if there's a little bit of the cardstock showing, you need to put either like a Teflon sheet or some type of protective layer just so the heat, whether it's your easy press or an iron, is not directly touching the cardstock, just as an extra precaution and protection. And I like to only lay it on for about 5 seconds at a time, just so the cardstock doesn't get too hot too fast. And just watch those edges, because those will burn first. If you see any browning, then go back a little bit on your heat setting. I like to do less heat and then gradually increase it once you get more comfortable with it. And then when it is done, I place some books or something heavy on top of the card, because that heat will kind of warp your cardstock a little bit. But this one is permanent vinyl, and I just transferred it with regular transfer paper onto this. And it does work. It'll just, you can tell like a little bit here on the edge, it's just not quite adhering as well, but it can work. And then my edges, if you're off a little bit, you can take scissors and just trim the edges. If like a little bit of the gray or the white showing, you can trim that up to make it look like you are in the center. I hope these tips and tricks will be beneficial to you the next time you need to make a card, whether that's for a birthday or any occasion. Again, don't forget to try these more complex designs. I know you can do it. As well as maybe try some new tricks up your sleeve that you learned today. If you have any other card designs, tricks, tips, suggestions that I didn't mention today, or ones that I mentioned today and you tried, let me know how they went, and what tricks you suggest using so we can all learn from them. I had fun crafting with you, and I'll see you next week. Happy crafting!